The summer of 1947 was unlike any other in American history. It was the dawn of the Cold War, a time of paranoia, but also a time of wonder. Across the United States, people were looking at the skies and seeing things they couldn't explain. It began in June when pilot Kenneth Arnold spotted 9 shimmering objects darting around Mount Rainier at speeds that defied the physics of the era. He described their movement like a saucer skipping across water. Suddenly, the flying saucer was born in the public consciousness. But while the media whispered about secret Soviet tech or mass hysteria, something very real and very solid was about to scream across the New Mexico desert. Roswell was a quiet town home to the 509th Bomb Group, the elite military unit that had dropped the atomic bombs just 2 years prior. These were not men prone to flights of fancy. They were the keepers of the world's most dangerous secrets. On the night of July 2nd, amid a fierce electrical storm, witnesses in Roswell reported seeing a glowing, disc-shaped object moving at incredible speed before disappearing toward the northwest. For some, it was just another lightning strike. For others, it was the sound of a collision that would echo through the decades. The next morning, rancher Mac Brazel rode out to check on his sheep. What he found on the Foster Ranch wasn't just wreckage, it was a scar on the earth. Spread across hundreds of yards was a field of debris that looked like nothing he had ever seen. There were bits of what looked like tinfoil, but when he crumpled it, it snapped back to its original shape, perfectly smooth without a single crease. There were lightweight beams similar to balsa wood, but they couldn't be broken or burned. Most haunting were the small purple symbols etched into the material, symbols that looked like an alien alphabet. Brazel didn't know he was standing in the middle of a cosmic crime scene. He gathered some of the material and eventually took it to Sheriff George Wilcox, who in turn contacted the Roswell Army Airfield. This is where the story takes its most dramatic turn. The military didn't just send a cleanup crew, they sent Major Jesse Marcel, the head intelligence officer. Marcel was a man trained to identify every aircraft on the planet. When he saw the debris, he knew instantly this did not come from a human factory. On July 8, 1947, the unthinkable happened. The United States military did something they have never done since. They told the truth. A press release was issued stating that the Army Air Forces had captured a flying disc. The headline splashed across the Roswell Daily Record, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The news went global in minutes, but the honesty lasted less than 24 hours. By the next day, the story was retracted. General Roger Ramey appeared on the news claiming that the elite 509th had made an embarrassing mistake. It wasn't a flying disc, it was a weather balloon with a radar target. They showed the press bits of torn rubber and common tinfoil, materials that bore no resemblance to the indestructible memory metal Mac Brazel and Jesse Marcel had described. The cover-up had begun, and for 30 years, the world was told to look away. If it were just a matter of metal and balloons, the story might have died. But as the years passed, the silence was broken by those who saw the one thing the government couldn't explain away: the occupants. One of the most compelling accounts came from Glenn Dennis, a young mortician in Roswell. He claimed he received curious phone calls from the airbase asking about small, hermetically sealed coffins and how to preserve bodies that had been exposed to the elements for days. When Dennis went to the base hospital, he encountered a frantic nurse who told him a story that chilled him to the bone. She described seeing 3 small bodies. They weren't human. They had large heads, fragile frames, and 4 fingers. Shortly after, the nurse was transferred to England and her records vanished. She was never heard from again. These greys have since become the face of the Roswell legend, but in 1947 they were a terrifying secret that the military was prepared to kill to keep. For decades, Roswell was a footnote. The witnesses were told that if they spoke, they would be charged with treason or worse. Mac Brazel was held in military custody for days and emerged a changed man, refusing to ever speak of the incident again. But in the late 1970s, legendary researcher Stanton Friedman found Jesse Marcel. Marcel, now retired and with nothing left to lose, dropped a bombshell. He admitted that the weather balloon story was a total fabrication. He testified that the material he recovered was extraterrestrial. His testimony reignited the flame. Suddenly, hundreds of witnesses began to come forward, firefighters, police officers, and military personnel, all describing a massive recovery operation, a second crash site with an intact craft, and a systematic campaign of intimidation by the men in black. In the 1990s, under immense public pressure, the GAO launched an investigation. The Air Force released a new report. They admitted the weather balloon story was a lie, but offered a new explanation. Project Mogul. They claimed the debris came from a top-secret string of balloons designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. When asked about the bodies, they released a second report claiming witnesses had actually seen crash test dummies dropped from planes. The problem? The crash test dummy program didn't even start until 1953, 6 years after the Roswell incident. The government was asking the public to believe that witnesses were having time-dilated memories. It was a desperate explanation for an impossible reality. Why does Roswell matter today? Because it represents the moment the modern world lost its innocence. It was the birth of the deep state, and the realization that the most important discovery in human history, that we are not alone, was being managed by a shadow government. If you look at the recent UAP hearings in Congress, the whistleblowers, and the declassified videos from the Navy, they all point back to the same desert in New Mexico. We are seeing the slow-motion disclosure of a truth that was buried in 1947. The debris, the symbols, and the crafts didn't go away. They were taken to places like Area 51 and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to be reverse-engineered. Our fiber optics, our integrated circuits, our stealth technology, many believe these are the gifts of the Roswell crash. Roswell isn't just a conspiracy theory, it is a historical crossroads. We are told to believe in the mundane, in balloons and dummies and mistakes. But the people who were there, the heroes of the 509th, tell a different story. They tell a story of a craft that fell from the stars, of a government that panicked, and of a secret that is finally starting to leak out into the light. As we look to the stars today, we have to wonder how many more ships are out there. And when will they finally admit that in the summer of 1947, the universe came knocking on our door?